Our first tipping point tonight, President Trump visited Puerto Rico, met with the mayor of San Juan, and still the mainstream media is braying that Trump's administration hasn't done enough to help the island. Of course, we have a long way to go to rebuild Puerto Rico after such a devastating hurricane. But why create this narrative of lies, pretending President Trump mishandled the disaster when that is simply not true? The mainstream media response to Puerto Rico is perhaps the grossest misrepresentation of the truth since President Obama promised us that our healthcare premiums would go down under Obamacare. Think about this for a moment. Liberals know what the truth is about Puerto Rico, yet they are purposely telling you a different story. Like what Hillary Clinton and Susan Rice did on television after the Benghazi attacks, telling us that the attacks were a spontaneous protest sparked by a YouTube video instead of telling us the truth they knew, that it was a terror attack waged by radical Islamists. Now, the left is known for rewriting history to suit their narrative. Revisionist history, it's called. The way they tell us the founding fathers were evil men, or the way they pretend that starving people standing in lines for stale bread and eating their own shoes in the Soviet Union, that wasn't because of socialism. Call this the next evolution of revisionist history. This is revisionist present, revisionist truth, of course, also known as lies. Of course, Puerto Rico is devastated by Hurricane Maria. That is not an instant fix. But to pretend the government response has been entirely lacking is simply a lie. Yet it's what we're hearing from the mainstream media. Watch this.
And yet you just saw Mariana Atencio in a town that is not half an hour from San Juan, and they are paying for ICE to refrigerate their food and medication. What's wrong with this picture, sir?
The problem is misinformation. First of all, we don't charge anything for ICE and food and commodities. That's not us. The second thing is your comparison.
Hold on, sir. We're not saying that it was FEMA charging, but in terms of misinformation, we just reported on it, and we reported honestly and directly people we just saw 2 minutes ago, 30 minutes outside of San Juan. That's not misinformation, buying ICE and waiting 6 hours for it. That's not a lie.
I don't want it. Listen to me. The bottom line is FEMA does not sell commodities.
Joining me now, host of the Andrea Kaye radio show, Andrea Kaye, and Democratic strategist Kevin Walling. Good evening, guys.
Hey, good to be with you both.
Great to be with you, Liz and Andrea.
All right, Andrea, let me start with you. I mean, to watch this video that we just played is astounding. Yeah. There's no other way to describe it than fake news and a complete disinterest and disregard for the truth. Andrea, why create this false narrative when it is so obviously a lie?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head in your open in talking about the left historically and now presently playing fast and loose with the facts. Look, we know that the mainstream media is an arm of the Democrat Party. We know that they're the ones that tried to interfere with in the election. You control the message and you control minds. They can't sell the liberal agenda on facts, and you mentioned Obamacare just as one example, and they can't make us hate President Trump with facts either, and that's one reason why they've got to lie. Their lies didn't work, and he won the election in 2016, and now they're going to just continue, though, to try to push lies and false narratives to try to make us hate him going into the 2018 election. Look, they were devastated that Harvey and Irma did not turn into being his Katrina, and now they're trying to Katrina Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, the American people do have access to facts, and we know that the main similarities between Puerto Rico and Katrina are an inept, if not corrupt, local government that hasn't done right by its people in a long time, including the lead up to this hurricane by not even calling up the National Guard. And now she's doing wrong. Mayor Cruz and others are doing wrong by their people in attempting to grossly politicize the situation.
And Kevin, let me turn to you because I understand that some of these Democratic politicians, even in Puerto Rico, don't like Trump. That's fine. They're entitled to their own opinion. But it is unrealistic to expect the federal government to be able to go into to an island, a territory that's devastated, as Puerto Rico was devastated by that hurricane, and just snap their fingers and fix this. Do these politicians, does the media truly believe the American people are stupid enough to believe the lies they're spewing?
Sure, it's going to take a long time for the island to come back, Liz, as you rightly point out. But Andrea spending her time on this show attacking the mayor of San Juan, as the president did over the weekend from his luxury resort in New Jersey when she was waist deep in sewage water trying to save her constituents, is pretty disgraceful. Now, I am rooting for the president to be empathetic, to go down there to help people. But when he went down there yesterday, he left an hour early than scheduled to get out of there, I guess, to get back here to a luxury resort or to just kind of shirk his duties as president. And the video coverage.
Wait a
of him
second,
down
wait a
there,
second, Kevin.
is
Let me interrupt you just for a
disgusting in
second.
terms of
Not so
throwing
that you don't
paper
make your
towels
point,
into the
but
crowd
just
and
so
stuff
that I
like
can
that.
go back.
He's not connecting with people.
Well,
or
let me go back to
helping
what you were
people
saying,
in
though,
any way,
because you're
shape, or
talking about
form,
the
Liz.
mayor of San Juan, and of course the media is playing up this
Yes,
so-called feud
Mayor
between the
Cruz.
mayor of San Juan and President Trump. We've all seen that, but I mean, I have to agree with President Trump on this one. It does seem to me that she's playing the role of an opportunistic politician. You mentioned that she was, waiting around in sewage, but she's complaining. Wait a second. She's complaining about a lack of federal response, but she has neglected herself to meet 2 different times with FEMA officials.
She met with White House officials yesterday when they were in town.
No, Kevin.
She
At the time in which she was making these allegations,
am I going to be able to respond here? Liz asked me a question, Andrea. Please refrain.
Well, then please do.
This mayor is leading the city back. I want this president to work with FEMA and with the local partners to take this island back. Only 7% of the island has electricity at this point. And the comparison to Katrina was made by this president, not by Democrats or opportunistic Democrats. The president minimized the catastrophe, saying it's not as bad as Katrina, when 7% of the island has power. When the 3.5 million people on that island, but the vast majority of them don't have access to
this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, though. It's purposely misrepresenting the facts. I mean, if you look at the context of the president's comment there,
Liz,
let me tell you. Let me tell you the context of it. The context of that comment was to actually praise the first responders in Puerto Rico for doing what they needed to do to save lives, as opposed to many more lives being lost in Katrina because the first responders in that area and the local governments, as Andrea mentioned at the beginning, were corrupt and unprepared for a disaster like that hurricane. It wasn't to demean the hurricane and the devastation in Puerto Rico, which Andrea can speak to.
Yeah, and I've got to go back and talk about this Mayor Cruz who was allegedly roaming around in the swamps. Was that in the high heels that she was seen walking around in yesterday?
Remember,
Kevin, you asked me to not interrupt you, and I'm going to please let me finish Liz's question now. And this is the same mayor that was standing in front of supplies saying we're dying down here. So, you're standing in front of supplies saying that President Trump has not put forth supplies or attempt to help. And we're hearing reports that those supplies were not delivered because local unions were refusing to deliver those in an attempt to leverage the situation.
False.
And I will tell you also that Mayor Cruz, was forced to admit,
where are these reports
she
coming
was forced
from?
to admit, she was forced to admit on other major media outlets that she had not been going to meetings. Kevin, yes, she did meet with President Trump when he came yesterday, but prior to that, she was not going to local meetings. Let me read some actual statistics that have happened down there. There are now 64 hospitals out of the 67 are partially and fully operational. 14 are now back on the electrical grid. 45% of this was just a few days ago. Have drinking water. 8 commercial airports are operational. President Trump also sent. Did you know, Kevin, that President Trump also sent the Navy was on its way there with amphibious bases, with supplies and hospitals on board prior to the hurricane even arriving. He dispatched that in advance. That's a fact that very few people acknowledge.
Guys, we are going to have to cut this off because we're out of time. But the point here is not to say that Puerto Rico has been adequately addressed or that we're finished helping. Clearly not. There's a long, long way to go. Unfortunately, they're going to experience the devastation and the repercussions for a long time. No one's arguing with that. No one's arguing that people still need vital supplies there. What I am taking issue with in this segment is the media misrepresentation of this. They are trying actively to create a false narrative before our eyes that President Trump has mishandled that. If you look at the facts of the case, even the ones coming from the woman, the mayor of San Juan, who wore a nasty woman shirt on Univision just today, it's not in fact true, and that's what I take issue with. Andrea, Kevin, thanks for coming on the show.